Hello, everyone. David Nelson here, and I'm joined with Seal. How are you doing today, Seal?
Oh, good. Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. It's great to be on the call, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, welcome to Chapter 14 of the Secrets to Increasing Your Power, Wealth, and Happiness book study. Chapter 14, The Value and Importance of Life Force Particles is what we're going to cover today. For those that joined us last week, thanks so much for all the feedback about the daily gratitude procedure that we covered. It was a great idea. Seal had to do it on Thanksgiving Day, and we really appreciate you for joining in and for showing up, because one thing that I mentioned last week was, in the games of life and getting better and doing our best, a lot of people talk about, education or personal development and things like that, but they don't often show up at different times when they need to show up. So we really appreciate you being here, and it's fabulous to be with you, and we're looking forward to reviewing this chapter with you. And for anyone else that's just jumped in, hasn't caught a lot of the other calls, what we're doing is offering, these free webinars to review some of the chapters and concepts in the Secrets to Increasing Your Power, Wealth, and Happiness book by Alan Walter. And, if you have any questions or comments as we go along, please put them in the chat box, and, we'll be here and we can help you get understanding of a very, very important book, isn't it, Seal?
Yes, it's probably the best book I've ever read.
What made it so good for you to read?
Really and truly, because I found where my life force particles were trapped. I didn't know why I was so stuck. And when I read that book, I could tell you the page number in the gold book. The gold book, by the way, is the same book as the black. We just updated the cover and updated the formatting. But I could tell you the exact page where I found, oh my gosh, I've been stuck there for 17 years. So that kind of tends to make me quite happy, getting my life force particles back.
And that's one of the benefits of reading the book. It's written in a certain way. Alan used to say that it will bring to view different people or times in your life where maybe you did have areas of winning, and then areas where you lost a few of your life force particles. So that's maybe happening to you as you go along reading these chapters. Chapter 14, the value and importance of life force particles. So let's talk a little bit about life force particles then, Seal. Is there anything you want to say?
Just that, and I mentioned this on previous webinars, I see my life force particles as my spiritual money. And when I start to talk to someone or start to talk to certain people, as far as friends and family members and just people in life, and looking at who I want to invest in, I always look to see, usually, is this going to enhance my life force particles or take a lot out of me? Because if I end up feeling drained at the end of the day and really can't be myself and say what I want to say, it's going to tie up some of my life force particles. And life force particles are so needed if you want to play really, really big games and accomplish great things and big dreams. So that's how important they are, because they're pieces of you.
Yeah, this is critical. In chapter 2, a lot of you would have read the basic force in the universe is life force, right? I think we can all agree about that. And its particles are small pieces, bits, fragments, or parts of a whole. So, and then it goes into describing what they contain. And that was one of the breakthroughs Alan had many, many decades ago. And it's been such an important discovery. He goes then on to say life force particles then can be defined as fragments of the life force known as you. So, life force particles, or particles of really life, just critical for creating and living a great life and making big things happen. So very, very important. And so hopefully you've got the idea that they are valuable. And he gives a couple of examples there of just saying, without them, or maybe being in the red zone, it feels like you're in a car without gas, or you have a radio without batteries. There's just no energy going into what you need to do. And so very, very important for many, many reasons, but that's the importance of them. So critical. And you know, in personal development, what you find is this person either has enough or doesn't have enough. And personal growth is about, you know, recovering and getting them and investing in them and achieving. So what are the main concepts you took out of this chapter, Seal?
Well, you know, I kind of went off on a tangent when I read the second chapter, and he mentioned the word teachers because, and how they, how when a child is in the learning process at school and people who don't need to teach properly ends up, you know, trapping your life force particles actually. So and the reason why I go off on a tangent is because I didn't know this knowledge when I was raising my children, and now I have grandchildren, and I have a 2-year-old grandson, and, you know, he's not talking that plainly yet, or at least where I can understand him, but kids are so holographic. I can see they see your pictures when you talk. And, you know, I watch them as they go to school because I've got a granddaughter who's 8, and I just know for myself how not being taught properly and how that makes you duller versus being the bright individual you are by having someone recognize who you are, and that we do communicate holographically. Yeah, and we have a lot. We seem to have. Well, I know most people have a lot of life force particles before they start school. So, paragraph 2 just kind of sent me off in that tangent about kids are so bright before they go to school.
Yeah, isn't that the case? And he makes a comment that takes the availability of free life force particles to be able to study, comprehend, and apply. And so, you know, our attention, or people's attention, is just made up of basically life force particles or personal energy units, or however you want it, personal power, however you want to describe it. And so, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's making me think of that phrase of, you know, a spiritual being having a human experience, or a human being having a spiritual experience. And it's obviously a combination of both for most of us, but essentially there is that spiritual side part of everyone. And so this is a description of really what that is made up of. And so what do you think, Seal, if someone knew who they were as they go to school? Because he's describing a couple of things there, isn't he? He's describing about the child or the student having enough attention or life force particles available to understand, right, to comprehend, and then to get into action. And then also, you know, the teachers or the system or the framework that they're going into that doesn't really understand, maybe sometimes or often, you know, what they're dealing with, who they're dealing with. And you combine the two together, and what sort of start does that give someone, right?
Totally. Well, I think if a person is taught, you know, very early in life who they really are, that they are a spiritual being having a human experience, that's going to put a very different person in the seat in the classroom in the education system, and probably won't go the effect so much of what teachers say, and can be a bit more empowered, especially if they have parents who know this knowledge. So yeah, so it'd be a very different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So he goes on to a couple of concepts there about, you know, not having enough life force particles or personal energy, and not having the attention span to record the concepts is what you're sort of describing at the top there, Seal. And that's the problem for most people. And that's why you see that as a child, right, going through the years and getting more and more tied up and more and more tied up and more and more tied up. And it makes it more difficult to be there, to learn new things, to handle life and things like that. And so the basic concept of this chapter is, you know, well, actually, that's why the education system, let's go back to the 3 points we sent out. That's why the education system doesn't work, because the concept of education is a major part is to draw out something that's latent, draw out of someone something that's there. Everyone's unique. They really have to know and find and decide what they want for their life and go about creating it. And so this is probably the main reason that the education system doesn't work, and didn't work maybe for you in many years, is because the teachers weren't aware of who you really were and weren't aware of how energy gets created and uncreated and things like that. And then maybe you also weren't aware of that too. And if you put them both together, you have a miseducation system. You have a sort of sausage factory being produced and all the boxes get ticked. But the most important sort of concept, the most important word, really, you, is never defined and never understood. And because it's not, then everything, if you have the main concept that's confused, then everything from that sort of, it's adding confusion to it and so on and so on, right, Seal? And that's probably why education or even training doesn't work.
Well, totally. And it piles it on top of, which traps your life force particles when you're going there to get more knowledge, to know more, and to enhance your life force particles. So, yeah.
So then he goes on to talk about, drug and alcoholism and things like that. But, and you covered again, but guarding and protecting your life force particles, first knowing they exist and they're incredibly valuable, and that's what makes up you, and that's what you use to create your goals and achieve what you want in life and things like that. And so, anyone stealing away or anyone you're giving away your power to is stealing away that other, your life force particles. So he talks about a phenomena of a high, and that is the sudden release of trapped life force particles. And so one of the things that I got from the book when I first read it was that Alan was quantifying really what some of these invisible concepts or spirituality is or was, and so I love the life force particle story and the measurement of it, of numbers and stuff like that, because it is a quotient and it's a quality of personal energy. And he said the phenomena known as a high actually is a sudden release of trapped life force particles. And so anytime we win or we achieve a goal, right, then it releases our attention or our energy from having to achieve something, and that puts us into a little bit of the high, doesn't it, Seal?
Yeah, totally. And I can it's so interesting to me. It makes common sense, but I can see how once you have had a high just once in life and you get, feel really more yourself or really bigger than, kind of ascend, also known as a high, I can see where, why a person would do anything to go back and try to recover that state or have another state, and why drug and alcoholism would be a solution to that problem. How it's such an easy solution to try that. I can see why a person would do that. That's really all they're attempting to do is get that high again.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about a personal story when I played sport as a teenager, 15, 16, 17. And, I captained the high school team and the state team. And then I was invited to some of the national training camps for New Zealand. And I joined in that, and then I was selected for the team. And I had a strong desire, strong intention to be part of it and to make the final team. And it was a 6 to 8 to 9 month process. And I invested all my available life force particles in that instead of the national exams, although I did pass those at the end of the year too. Yeah, what was interesting to come out of that is we went to Taiwan, and we played a tournament, Oceania tournament, and we were undefeated, although we lost on goal difference to Australia to go to the finals in Canada. But it created such a high for me, some of that stuff. One, just being in that environment and being, seeing, the whole thing unfold, but also, being in a stadium for whatever, 12, 15,000 or a little bit more people at one time, and all the noise and things like that just felt like, all the things that I'd seen on the videos and TV about different games. And it created a massive high. And he doesn't mention it here because, as you said, he goes into describing most people, addictive behavior is trying to recover that high. But for me, it created what we call an ascension experience or a high experience. And a lot of things came out of that for me, both positive and negative. I was never the same again. But and I haven't really thought if I tried to recreate that, because I didn't end up playing for too many more years. But some of the forces I unlocked from it meant that, you know, by the end of the next year, I had trouble walking. There was so many problems I had physically. But so I don't think I was trying to achieve that high again from that. But I definitely released a tremendous amount of trapped or life force particles by just playing that game and being in that game. But maybe what I didn't do is redirect them to bigger and better games that I wanted to play, instead of, you know, saying, oh, well, I'll make the under 19s and then I'll go on to the next level and things like that, you know. Although not necessarily, I don't know if it's an addiction or not, but that's another example of when you know, earnestly and studiously and intentionally go after something and achieve something, and then you get it, you know, you're going to have that high. And that can be the start of a new set of processes for someone, can't it?
Totally. You bring up an interesting point. When you release a lot of life particles, you need to reinvest them. You need to use them and reinvest them into goals.
Yeah, you do. I mean, that's the thing. When we have a win, obviously what we would all like to do is to acknowledge it and validate it and celebrate, right? Celebrate the win. And if you see any successful person, if they go off and do nothing. And I'm thinking about some of the things that have been in the news recently with all the accusations or discoveries of inappropriate sexual behavior and use of power and things like that through a lot of well-known people. And I was just thinking about some of them obviously play massive games. And so, you know, what happens to them when they step away from that, you know? Is it the end? It could be. For a lot of them, you know, and they've got maybe a lot of things to be responsible and clean up from, but just being able to hold that position and you know, for many different levels, from the amount of money they make, from the amount of influence they've had, you know, that's a lot to be responsible and then to lose, isn't it?
Totally. It's a prime example of having a high, basically, and then what kicks in.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I don't know if I've read anywhere is, but, you know, sexuality and power are pretty synonymous mood levels. And so you can see that, well, I can see it from some of the stories that I've heard play out and how that gets mixed in and things like that. But anyway, the point Alan's making, I guess, in this part of the chapter is, you know, what some people are really seeking when they're taking drugs or alcohol or doing different things. I mean, there's good highs. Good methods of getting high and probably destructive methods of getting high. And so that's usually what lies behind addictive behavior. They're trying to seek and feel better about themselves or life and recreate a previous high experience. And I don't know about you, but even thinking about it now, in high school, there's sort of a transition, which was funny. And closer to the senior year, we were allowed some alcohol, you know, at the end, parent supervised at the end of some of the games, which seems a bit silly. And then, you know, me and some of our friends used to go and get people to buy some alcohol before a school dance or something like that, you know, some adults or something like that. So it creates this state, this false state. And, you know, and it's sort of, I don't know, it lays the seeds of how people sort of go on and act it more and more in adulthood. It becomes part of their life. And I never thought of, I was trying to recreate a high or those times where it was just fun and easy and things like that. And as opposed to just sort of like something you did in your 20s, you know?
Yeah.
But that's really what people and anyone you know, maybe are doing that. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get back into high. And so,
well, and I see that, I know in my own life, you know, as a teenager, I was, you know, would drink when I shouldn't have been drinking because I was not of age. And I didn't know what I was seeking, but I will tell you, I was seeking the same thing that I see a lot of other people that I've coached and trained are seeking. They're trying to get unsubmerged from the stuff they're sitting in so they can be more themselves and be free of a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of things they're getting they don't want, so they can create the kind of life they want to create. So that is usually, I find, at the heart of what they're wanting to create. But it's that that kind of leads us down to the illiteracy part. I think there's some spiritual illiteracy that people are missing.
Yeah, there is. You really just describe what some people sit in their lives and try to fight and get free from it. But yeah, the other part of the chapter, you're right, it's about the massive, social problem of illiteracy, even more than being unable to read and write, but to be able to, think in concepts and apply those concepts. Although Alan's got an older now, 1993, in one of the books there of functionally illiterate individuals. There's just a lot of people, and this is US-based, that are functionally illiterate. And if we combine why education doesn't work and the person is sort of confused about who they are, and then the teachers are confused about who they are, and they're just teaching them facts or fiction about events that have happened throughout history instead of really teaching them life skills. And, obviously maybe it's changed a little bit now with technology and some stuff like that, although you hear the other side of it, people getting stuck in technology. And so you've got a lot of people walking around that can't, locate what's right and what's wrong, and how to predict the consequences of their actions or their accomplishments. And so, what does that mean for people generally, Seal?
Well, I can look at, because I experienced a time like that in my own life, and I know just based on everything I've studied, written by Alan, and and I've coached so many. I've coached, over 1,000 people, so I know the manifestations and what they experience. A lot of it comes from, not knowing how to act and how to make decisions and stuff. Comes out of, if you've had someone that's quite dominating in your life, that's had an overbearing, dominating personality, or if you were raised by someone that had a very strict program in place with a bunch of do's and a bunch of don'ts and a bunch of must and a bunch of should nots. Some of the religions can be quite like that. So, if you're caught up in that and was raised like that, at the end of a few years of that, you can be, there's a lot of craziness in that, and you can be, in such a mindset to where you're really quite not sure how to act, how to be, or what to do, and what it's okay to have. So it kind of affects your whole being. But processing, as we know, thank goodness, helps you find right answers and the truth of it, and releases all those stuck life force particles. But that's what I see, just negative programs.
So, and so a lot of people are just want to survive, want to fit in, want to make it, and deal with all the pressures of life. And that's okay if that's what they want to do. And, we're all doing that probably in some levels of life. But we've talked about a destructive, most people are sabotaged by the destructive education system. And I've asked a lot of people, hey, when you were younger, were you set up for success? Your own personal success? And I've hardly had anyone ever say, yeah, I was. No, it's normally like, oh, that's a great question. No, I wasn't. But what would be a constructive education system, Seal?
When you say a construct, I'm not sure what it means.
Well, Alan's describing, people have been sabotaged by a destructive education system because of all the things we've just talked about. Yeah. But, what would be a positive or a constructive education system that someone could go into? I think of, the first thing is the importance of presence, and the importance of knowing who you are and finding that out for yourself, and defining words and making sure that people don't go past too many any words really that they don't understand. And it's time to discuss that. It's time to discuss what they think about that, and then, things like that. And also getting proper life skills as they go through the system. The education system should support what's needed in life instead of it being a separate entity that, buries people really and creates the natural abilities or genius or really, and all those things that people have heard before that Alan's describing here is just, their personal energy. It was there and now it's not there, or it's been transformed into negative personal energy, and now they're fighting themselves and they're fighting everyone, and they can't wait to get out to do something, and things like that. So do you have any other ideas how, if you were creating a positive education system, to start, people off? What a couple of things you put in there?
Well, I would put, just like you said, presence, and I would train all of my teachers in some of the courses that we teach, so they know that, they have a spiritual awareness of what a person and who a person really is. And then I would use clean slate on all the concepts and words of each subject that a person is studying. And clean slate is a process that we use to basically clean your slate, so to speak, so that your own thoughts and precepts are inspected, so that you have a clear meaning and a clear comprehension of the subject you're studying or the word you're studying. And then the other thing that I would do mainly, the biggest thing is I would find out what the person's interest line is. I just did a short video. It hadn't been released yet, but it's for anybody who's ever thought about having children, wants to have children, has children, or grandparents. And I really said, you really need to be skilled in watching your child's interest, where their interest line lies. What are they interested in? If you sign them up to a bunch of programs like art and various activities, you need to watch and help them identify what interests them most. What do they love most? And then let them study the things they want to study. That's, that just ticks me off versus making them study things that don't interest them.
Yeah, totally. And just for those that have a full understanding of what presence means, it's a spiritual ability and state where basically, it's how you appear and operate in life. And so, the ability to be, your true self or spiritual self and have all those abilities and appear and operate like that is what we're talking about. And it's a simple exercise which we practice and teach, and it's changed many of our lives, where it helps you, practice that. And as you do that, you're able to concentrate better and focus better and really get control of, basic parts of, you and your mind and your body and the environment. And so, that would be a very, very important thing to do. And, instead of just being, a different type of person, with different name and things like that. Meaning, like a David or something like that, that gets created as we go along, isn't it? Our personalities gets created. And the biggest thing that I think that I've ever read or found out about was just that idea of, not just body, mind, and spirit, but, the importance and the relationship between each, and, letting them out in the best way possible. But yeah, that'd make a huge difference. And it seems easy from the outside, and we've all probably done it wrong or had it done to us wrong, and the teachers had them done to them wrong and things like that. But anyways, that could be a super education system. And then the last point he's making in this chapter is that, the value of importance of your life force particles, your personal energy. Okay, you've got to protect that. You've got to invest it where you want, and sometimes you've got to, make conscious choices to not invest it where you don't want. But he just goes into some facts there, or some observations that poverty, unhappiness, hate, chaos, untruth, all those other things they're catching, right? If you go into agreement with those around you that things are as bad as they are and all that other stuff, then they trap, your positivity, they trap your idea of a positive future and things like that. And so if you want to be really yourself and give yourself the best chance to be successful and prosperous and happy, then you can't surround yourself with people that do not know, who are illiterate. And it's even a step further than that. People that are really literate, and not just in every word, but understand positive concepts, understand what prosperity would be, or success would be, and happiness, and doing what they love to do. It's such a rare thing. But that would give you the best chance of being able to be yourself as well, right, Seal?
Yeah, totally. Just having the ability to communicate positively using positive words. That sounds simple, but I will tell you, if you're not trained and you didn't have a positive upbringing, those positive concepts don't exist for most people. They just don't.
And that's what often shows up in the life and skills analysis, doesn't it? When we measure where someone is in the green zone, yellow zone, and red zone. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend you do that, because it gives us a score as well of basically, personal energy score, you could say it. But isn't that the case often, Seal, that people can often just go in and out of the green zone, their natural state, but to consistently stay there, they do need a lot of literacy, don't they?
Oh, you have to have a tremendous amount of literacy. And the way those, when those personal zone profiles were created by Alan, the first thing on the very first chart is all about the ability to know. And the short and skinny of that is how literate are you? How vast is your vocabulary? Because all the people that he studied, going all the way back to Socrates, Aristotle, Jesus, Gandhi, Michelangelo, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and all of those, basically they had a vast vocabulary in their areas that they took to mastery. And the reason why that's so important is because that's what helps you create huge positive concepts and phenomenal visions of what you want to create.
Yeah, it's so true. And put that on the dictionary, by learning, positive words, it helps you create positive images or recover those, because language is an interface. That's why if you're born in Japan, you speak Japanese. You're born in the US, you speak English. You're born in New Zealand, you speak a combination of both. But the key behind a lot of that is spiritually, people communicate, basically in images and holograms, and they get activated by emotions. And so our abilities to create those positive images is important, to be able to control, how we're using our minds and what programs we're activating. And, and so we can create better futures for ourselves. So life force particles or pieces of you or your personal energy are very, very, very important, and they have to be valued and utilized optimally by you. And sometimes you need to make some changes in your life, and other times you're doing okay, right, Seal?
Yeah, totally. I thought this was a good chapter. I love this chapter. So that's all I can say on that piece.
Yeah, so what we find in that person's profile, and if you have a conversation with most people, besides they're on this social sort of mood, and it's just that the definitions of a lot of the positive words are missing, and so the concepts are missing, or they can't utilize those concepts, or sometimes they're trying to utilize them with the wrong people, and that's what he's describing at the back end. It's a lot of environments are full of a lot of upset people, and it's not okay to be honest. It's not okay to be loving. It's not okay to be truthful. It's not okay to be knowledgeable, because it'll wreck the game of whatever game's going on then. So as you work on yourselves, you're very special people, you invest in a lot of time and effort into yourself, then you don't have to go around making everyone wrong. But this is an agreement sort of universe. And in a lot of the conditions we have, at some level we've gone into agreement with, even if we've just recorded them unconsciously, and which has happened to most of us as we're growing up. And so, once we've got control of our consciousness and our conscious mind, in a sense, then, we get the chance to be more selective. And so, literacy is a very, very, very important piece of being able to interface and communicate with people, and for you to get what you want, and for others to get what they want. So, in closing, is there any final comments you have, Seal? How people are?
I just wanted to, this is just an applicable example of having the positive word. I mean, I'd been in the subject for quite a while. I will never forget this. A lot of people don't know the meaning of happy or happiness. They never looked it up. And one day, I was working with Alan, and he loved this particular color of flower. So I had planted flowers all along his driveway where he parked his car. And he saw me out there planting them, and he made a comment that I get so much happiness by planting those flowers. And I really just stopped dead in my tracks, because if you knew me, you'd know that I was raised on a farm, and I do not like any kind of gardening work. I don't like anything like that. I'm not a farm girl. I try not to be a farm girl because I don't like that. But anyway, I just looked at him really strange, and I said, I do. because he used the word happiness, and I was enjoying it. I loved it because I knew it was something he loved. But I would tell you what I did. I just thought happiness. I never equated happiness to planting flowers, even though I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I went and looked up the definition in the Knowledgeism Dictionary of happiness. And I'm paraphrasing here, but basically one of the definitions is that feeling that you get when you are doing something that you like, and then you get the end result, and it's that sensation. And I was just like, yeah, I do get a lot of happiness out of that. But I mean, there was my lack of literacy in that area of just the word happiness. And I looked at it and I thought, I knew that I'd lived more in happy moments in my life than I had happy. But after I read that definition, I was like, man, I've had a lot of happy moments. I just didn't know that's what it was. So it pays to look up the positive words. Look up all the positive words, in the Secrets book. Look up all the positive words in the on the life and skills analysis on the Personal Zones profile, which is found on our website. And start getting familiar with them. Get a holographic vision, and that's what I would like to end my comments with.
Good. And if you want to read more about the life force particle in detail, it's in chapter 2. It's very, very, sometimes I've called them jelly beans before, but it's just a very, very important concept that it describes your personal energy and why people are the way they are and why they aren't the way they aren't. And so this is great. Value yourself and value your personal energy and your life force particles today and in the future. So thanks so much for joining in today. We hope you have a very positive and green zone day. We really appreciate you joining in and being part of this experience, and we really just want to help you get some understanding of these concepts so you make your life better and better. So thank you, everyone. And next week is chapter 15, which is about the basic policy for positive life force particle recovery. It's only a couple of pages, literally 1.5 pages. Again, so please read that before next week and you'll be all set up to go.
And I'd just like to say one more thing. Thank you so much to Raúl for setting this up and being our moderator. Thank you, Raúl.
Good stuff. So,
okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.